Hail and well met, my dudes. Have I been into Taz again? Yes, I've been into Taz again. It's Rhinociart. You know me by now, I would think. It's that magical time of year when the weather decides maybe it'll snow, but probably rain. When people get all festive and stuff. When a collection of maybe 30 songs plays in every store on loop for a month and a half. And most importantly, it's back. This is supposed to be a Stitch hat, by the way. I got it at Disney like 10 years ago. The crinkle tankles, awful sounds. Anyway. Whatever, it's a look now. I've been on the Neopets website basically since its inception. Not exactly, within the first 3 or 4 years of its creation. And it was fun going back to the site fairly recently and seeing things in my safety deposit box that were marked as like year 4, when the website was on year 22. Obviously, although the site is a barren wasteland except for a bunch of people in their 30s who are obsessed with racking up fake money to buy fake objects. When I was a kid, it was a big deal. Some kids had their Club Penguin, some had their Habbo Hotel, I think was the thing. I had Neopets. Side hilarious note. You know those Maximum Ride books done by James Patterson? Yeah, the premise of those books, a bunch of kids who were like part animal and were in cages and raised by crazy scientists and then escaped and went on adventures. Yeah, that's exactly the premise of like the most popular type of roleplay on the Neopets message boards when I was a little nugget. So if you're ever wondering where James Patterson got his ideas from, even though I never touch the site otherwise, every time December comes along, my little child brain kicks into gear and goes, hey, but the advent calendar? And like, I'm a grown-ass adult. I know that I don't need to do that. I know there's no benefit to doing it. I know the site is probably on its way out. I mean, Flash is toast by the end of this year, next year, and that site runs entirely on it. So like, it's riddled with ads. And at this point, most of the stuff on it doesn't work. It's a nostalgia thing. You can't really get after me for it, okay? Let's just don't judge me. But the point is, every December, I go back to the site. There's just some little serotonin hit that one gets when you click on the thing and you get a prize every day and it's like, yes, the prize. Something about like collecting them all. You want to be there every day. You want to get all the things. Not that I ever do get all the things, but it's like, it's the principle of the matter. So once again, I was on the website checking out the advent calendar and like, okay. I always thought that site was an interesting study into human pack bonding instinct. Because even though these things, the little creatures on the site, for those of you who don't know, the essential premise of the site was that you've got little pets, little images of characters with personalities, and you take care of the pets, and you do like games and stuff on the website. There wasn't a lot to it. I mean, it was a big website, but there wasn't a lot at bare bones. The weird part is, and the interesting part when it comes to how human brains work, even though everything that the characters said, all the text that would pop up at random, it was all based on just like a cornucopia of suggestions that the computer had to play with. There was no specific to your character's traits. It was all just random junk. Despite that, over the years I could have sworn that the 2 little distinct pets that I had distinct personalities. And like, granted, I get that human brains work this way in that I probably just made them up. Over time, I convinced myself that there was a personality to these little characters, and I rolled with it. Actually, the first fanfic that I ever wrote was for Neopets, and it was done on loose leaf in elementary school about the little pet that I had on the website going on a cruise. I don't know why that was appealing, but that's what I wrote. So at the beginning of December, I did actually try to log into the website because I needed that advent calendar hit, and I couldn't. Something had gotten reset, and I was, for a moment, very afraid that my little creatures had been deleted. And it was weird because half of me was like, I literally could not care less, and the other half was like, no! Anyway, I did end up getting it all figured out, so we're fine. They still live. But the point is, it got me thinking about the weird emotional connection I had to these images of potential of characters that didn't actually exist. The whole experience of trying to get my account back up and running and need advent calendar every year for the past 17 years got me thinking about how even at a young age I was making characters. So today I thought it would be kind of fun if I drew said characters. So today you get weird alien Neopet furries. Happy holidays! I did have the option of maybe trying to draw animals or trying to draw people, but instead I went for this weird anthropomorphized medium ground. I got some reference images from the site, which actually are a little bit different from the ones that I grew up with. First of all, the bottom character, that design didn't even exist when I was a kid, and the top one used to look angrier. To add insult to injury, or in this case, development to character, the top creature is a Zafara named Rain Angel, and she was my baby when I was a baby. Even though all the text you get for the characters interacting with stuff is randomized, it always seemed like she was very snarky. She always had very disapproving things to say, very much like, ew, I hate that, or this is yucky, or why are you like this? So over time, it just seemed to me like she was sort of a sassy character. She was a little bit of a snark bucket. And so I tried to convey some of that personality in her pose. She's a little bit sassy, kind of flipping her hair if she had more hair. Give or take 7 years after I made Angel, I was taking a look at the website's Pound, which is basically just where people ditch their Neopets after giving them goofy names like Poopy Butt. And I ran into this little Ixie character, which clearly is some kind of goat, named Iocast. Up until that point, I had sworn loyalty to having only one pet ever, but this little stinker caught my attention for some reason, and then I got emotionally attached. So here we are. Iocast as a character, by contrast, seemed to be much more lighthearted and easily amused. He was a very sweet little character. So I decided when I drew him next to his older sister, it was going to be in a much more excitable, entertained way. So I don't know what he's looking at, but he's very excited to see it. Even though by this point I knew these characters were going to be some kind of furries or something of the like, I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to give Iocast just like a goat's body, or if I wanted to go more humanoid. But like at this point, Angel was looking so human-ish that it would be really weird if I just had like a no-armed centaur or like a goat with a people face. That would just be getting into super creepy territory. So instead I decided to go with this sort of centaur-ish shape and give him like just very spindly upper body. Obviously, drawing quadrupeds is not my strength, but I did try to keep with a more compact shape. I think he might still look a little bit too much like a pony instead of a goat, but you know, practice. I've never done this before. It was a lot of fun figuring out what characteristics I wanted to emphasize and which I wanted to play down, because obviously some of these things I was translating onto a more humanoid face. So where the patterns of color happened, what the colors were even going to be, and how I was going to translate these very cartoony shapes into a more anatomically, I won't say correct, but a more anatomically balanced, I guess, creature. I'm not really sure I'm happy with the freckles on Iocast, but I do like the little goat eyes that I gave him, kind of the more horizontal pupils. And Angel, well, she turned into a weird mismatch of things. Initially, I was thinking of kangaroos when I was gonna go into the drawing, but then when I was looking at the reference photo, I'm thinking she's a little more rabbit-y. So instead we got this weird conglomerate of the two, and something else entirely. I'm not really sure. Both of these characters ended up looking more alien than anything else. I did have a lot of fun drawing the tail on Angel. It's very like feathery at the end, which is interesting. And I didn't particularly care for the reference photo only having spikes on her back. I didn't see why they wouldn't trail down the tail, so I took some artistic liberties. As I did in my drawing of Jester from a couple weeks ago, I tried to initially do one flat layer of color over everything so that I could magic wand that area, and then put different sort of shading and lighting layers over top of that. In this, I have learned a lesson though. You definitely want to be precise about this layer when you initially put it down. I was just slapping it down because I wanted it to be done with. But the problem is, then when I put every other layer over top of it, the magic wand was picking out all these little areas outside of the line, so I had to go around and clean everything up a whole bunch, and it was a huge waste of time, so noted for the future. There was also a leak in the line somewhere, and so I kept trying to bucket fill it and couldn't find the hole, and it drove me crazy, and eventually I just ended up manually filling it all in. In order to make these characters look a little less cartoony, I decided to desaturate their colors. So instead of a super bright pink for her pelt, I was going with more of a muffled, dusty pink. As I initially started shading, I realized I couldn't really do my normal sweeping shading because then it made the character look like she had flat skin, and I was like, oh crud, she's supposed to be some kind of animal hybrid, therefore needs fur. So the shading ended up having all these like dashes in it, which I think kind of gave the effect without being too detailed. I actually did a lot of my coloring along the way using the magic wand or the lasso tool. I don't know that it was super helpful. I do think having the large scale lassoed body shape to be able to color within is very great, but the individual, like trying to draw around these yellow parts and then fill them in, I just couldn't get specific enough with the lasso, at least not zoomed out like I was, so I guess, again, my rush is my own fault, but just saying. I did also make a bit of a mistake with these extra spots that I put over Iocast's pelt because I did them all in one color despite the shading and highlighting going on in the rest of his body, so oops, that's not the most subtle. And then once I had those base colors on, I did have to go back around over every single layer and clean up my line art. Again, please be careful with that initial flat layer because if I'd done that cleanly, it would have saved me so much time. I honestly can't decide how I feel about the noses. On one hand, it does make them look more animal. On the other hand, it makes them look more animal, and they had pretty human features on the face, so it's a little creepy. I'm not sure how I feel about these. Since there was a lot going on with just the look of these characters, I didn't want to do anything too crazy for the background, so pretty flat colors was it, and then just the hint of grass underneath them. And then the really fun part came in using the overlay layers. So because I had that underneath layer, which I did eventually clean up, I was able to magic wand select basically the entire shape of the characters, and then my overlay layer would be trapped within those parameters. I ended up doing a red shade layer, a yellow highlight layer, and then a bluish purpley sort of extra shade layer. And then I had a whole overlay that was entirely over the entire image, and that one was sort of a reddish orange. It's always kind of hard to decide what the right threshold is for the colors, because once you see them at 100%, everything else just doesn't seem like enough. I did add a little bit of purple highlight as well, which I muffled down to nearly nothing, but it's there, so it counts. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this. If you liked it, please let me know with a like or a comment or something to that effect, because it's very helpful and I very much appreciate it, and it's the holidays. We're all giving people gifts. That's the gift. I don't know. For real, guys, so thank you very much. If you'd like to hang out and see more of this kind of stuff in the future, feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye. Holly jolly necktie. What's up, everybody? I'm rhinociart, and today, what are we even doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm doing. This is all improv. Am I confused? Yes. My table. The table. It's a couch. Festiver. Festiver. More festiver. This is itchy. Did I say all I wanted to say? It's a mystery we don't know. ridiculous? I feel ridiculous. But the whole thing got me thinking about nothing. My brain is empty. No thoughts here.
Merc Wrestler.